Welcome to Movie of the Year, the only podcast that has the science and the screaming to determine what the best movie is of any given year. This is a bonus episode of 2002.
Woo!
I am your host, Mike. With me are panelists who will not win points because we're all just friends tonight. That woo you heard is Greg.
I'm a friend to all men tonight.
And Ryan.
I guess tonight I will be an enemy to all men. But every other night, friend.
I will say if I was giving points, I would give Ryan a point for the weird thing Greg said right there. That creeped me out. This is the kind of friend who you don't trust to bring you a drink you haven't seen him pour. I'm a friend to all men.
Tonight.
I hang out with Queen Mab in the forest. We're just letting our
Oh
hair
my God,
down.
Mike, and I'm so sorry. I am here on behalf of the Fug Duglies, who are all behind me. As you can see.
Oh, you're the Fug Duglies. Who are you here with, Greg?
I'm here with the Skinny Minis.
The Skinny Minis. They
Yeah.
are skinny, but they are scary.
Yeah, they're the little tiny thin gang. A lot of times people, when they think of someone who is small, they think of someone chubby, not the Thinny Minis.
And the Thinny Minis are all wearing Mickey Mouse ears, but with a bow on top, so
Yeah.
they are minis. Like,
yeah.
And they have the tastiest snacks.
mhm.
Girl Scouts Thin Mints.
And
Okay.
of course, our motto is tonight we're the friends of all men.
That's it. Don't trust it.
A motto that includes the word tonight is a little iffy.
I'm here with the theater kids.
Mhm.
We're a little too much.
And I see the theater kids all have the theatrical poster for the Warriors painted on their face.
Yeah,
Yes. Each one of us has the full poster of the Warriors.
You're each. It's weird because your gang is each dressed as a different warrior gang.
Yes.
Yeah.
So we know just kill anybody who looks like.
Anybody who's like
Yeah.
just like a old time baseball player.
Yeah.
That was my favorite
And
one.
half of us showed up with glass bottles on our fingers, which means we cannot fight very well.
The roller skate people that like have to be like, okay, real quick, let us take off our skates before the rumble starts.
No, don't trip me.
They all dress like baseball players. They could have been the baseball players, and they're like, no, not tough enough. The baseball furies.
Do you guys
Wait,
feel dumb just
that is
standing here with
scary.
baseball bats, not wearing like the whole outfit? You know, I did feel dumb. I didn't want to say anything.
But I don't want to dress like the baseball players. Let's dress like baseball managers have to do, standing in that dugout.
High pants up to the nips, clipboard in hand.
I like the gang that everyone dresses like NBA coaches, not just wearing suits,
Slick back hair.
holding clipboards.
Balding, slicked back hair. You can see most of the scalp.
When the baseball furies need more guys, they have to, first of all, talk it over between each other and then go to like an old school phone and pick it up and call for more.
Where it's the one you put your face right next to the wall and you hold the duck bill looking thing up to your mouth.
Yeah.
Old phones are dumb as hell. Gangs are dumb.
Gangs are dumb.
Gang's
We're
phone's dumb.
Anti-gang podcast, right?
I'm going to switch out the theater kids. I have the Crips. We're going to win this fucking fight.
Wow, you just really upgraded.
Yeah, but they all look like the Crypt Keeper. That's not.
Oh, yeah. I should have said we're the Crypts.
Yeah.
With a T.
It's mostly bad puns.
Thecrypto.com.
Still, the Bloods hate them as well.
Well, who doesn't?
Are we past that, or if we talk shit on this podcast about Crips and Bloods, will we die?
Well, as 90s kids, it's never over for
Yeah.
us. The conflict will go with us to the grave.
Which one of these very cool, very dangerous gangs can't say the letter so they change the words?
Yeah, I think I would definitely not be that one. I'm not going to call it a bouch.
But I will go to put my starter jacket on of the Los Angeles Kings old school silver and black jersey,
Yeah,
and
dude.
I won't put it on because the principal's going to get mad at me.
Yeah, man. You can't wear a Raiders jacket
No.
just walking around.
Well, it's because they suck and the principal had taste. He was an Eagles fan. E-A-G-L-E-S, Eagles.
What percentage, just to bring it back to Movie of the Year, the podcast that we're on, what percentage of what we know about gangs is because of John Singleton and Boys in the Hood?
Yes.
Oh, man.
100?
Gangs is definitely one of those topics where when I was younger, I felt like I knew something about them. And then when I became just a little bit older, I was like, okay, everything you know about this topic is from entertainment.
Mhm.
And as you get older, you realize how many things you think you know something about are just everything you've ever known about this topic. Like, I've never really seen a gun.
Mm-hmm.
Every gun I've ever seen has been on
let
screen.
me get my bag.
Mike, no!
The podcast
Screaming.
gun? You brought the podcast gun again?
But so, yeah, gangs are definitely a topic like that. Like, I just, if it's not on The Wire or...
It's The Wire, Boys in the Hood,
Yeah.
Dangerous Minds, High School High.
Don't be a menace to
All
South
the
Central
hits.
while drinking your juice in the hood.
Big one, yeah, definitely. And then Gangs of New York,
Mhm.
2002's Gangs New York. That's the one that taught me that everyone will like take the same really bright color and just sort of like tie it around their head.
Look, we're blue. We got to put blue on.
Well, there was less colors back then.
I don't want to give away what we're going to talk about or my feelings on this movie, but there is a way of watching this where it is as much of a parody as High School High or Don't Be a Menace.
So we're talking about Gangs of New York. Don't remember if we said that. You know what? Because it's a bonus episode and it's the
just gonna
sleepy
do a bad job.
We're all
holiday
in
season.
pajamas.
I can reveal this. We are for the first time in like a year in the same studio,
That's
and so
true.
the energy is going to be like the theater kids, a little too much.
You're going to hear a lot of la,
Goofy.
la, 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 that's making out.
Oh, and it's my pet pig, Babe.
La, 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 la,
And
la.
Mike's gun that he brought for some reason.
That's what I named Babe.
But that's one of the like specifically talking about the color palette, like the garish blue and the garish red. To me, that is an indication that a lot of this movie, at least in the beginning, is striving to be like, I don't know, like tongue in cheek or in the style.
In the style of, yeah.
Public-
I don't think there's a sense of humor or irony here that I think it desperately needed.
Mhm.
It would have been a
Yeah.
far different movie, but
Nobody making the movie thinks it's that. But if you told me there was a group in like Omaha, Nebraska that does Rocky Horror style
Oh, for
midnight
sure.
shows with this, I'd be like, yes, and I will go to that.
Okay, so
Or
it's
in South
accidentally camp.
South Carolina recreating this on the grassy knoll, like doing recreations of this. And it's not just the we love Scorsese here, right?
We
Like,
do.
Yeah, we're Scorsese. What do Scorsese fans call themselves?
Marvel fans.
We are scores of Scorseses. No, we'll get there.
And we've done After Hours.
Yes.
Is that
that
the
might
only
be
one?
it.
Irishman.
And The Irishman. 2 movies that I love for sure. Like
And
I think,
someday we'll watch more of his movies.
If we have time.
it's not just the colors that maybe he thought, maybe he read in that book that he based this on, that like that's what happened, so I got to show it. But like gangs walking around corners while getting ready. And
Yeah.
like their slow motion here, we're all gonna one at a time get into a line.
Or the
You know,
way they like show up to meetings.
Uh-huh.
Like they like it's so
The Piggly
campy.
Wigglies are here.
the gangs of New York did not build New York; they built elementary schools.
Yes.
And that's how elementary schools get.
I could see an amazing episode of Recess based on this that would fucking crush.
I don't know if I'm just gonna go for it. I don't know if a movie that I've rewatched for this show has ever moved down more in my estimation
Yeah.
by watching it.
Perfect segue, Ryan. What was your relationship to this movie before this week?
I remember seeing it, and I remember the big thing was that Scorsese sort of back, and I don't know like what his IMDb says just before this, but I remember Bringing Out the Dead was just before this,
Yes.
and that was a big Nicolas Cage flop. And Kundun was before this, and like is one of our best gone, right?
He didn't have a lot of 90s smashes.
I think Casino.
Early 90s is Goodfellas and Casino.
Casino's 95, and then after that, it's sort of like a lot of like all of my pet projects are coming together because I made Goodfellas to Casino.
And I feel like did people love Casino when it came out, or has it like grown in people's estimation?
It wasn't a big box office hit, I don't think, but
Not
it's
boffo?
so I don't know if there's a lot of boffo-ness, but it's so watchable, it's so likable, it's so quotable that I think that in its estimation, like it is Goodfellas Jr., but why not? Like
Who cares?
Yeah.
That's a good idea.
I love James Bond Jr. as a kid. I'm going to fucking like Goodfellas Jr. too.
mini golf is fun. And then like he rolled that into all these pet projects that tanked and costly, like spent so much money. And so I think Gangs of New York was supposed to be this return, but costlier than all of them put together. Like they rebuilt.
Building
they get
1800s New York is expensive.
Yes.
And did they get their money's worth? Because I felt like sometimes the sets looked really cool.
Yes.
But here's the
And
problem.
it was
Undeniable.
fantastic. It felt like we were watching an old movie even though it's when we were humans, so like this it shouldn't be an old movie, but it was great to watch people without green screen in the back. Like they're in that Paradise Square right now.
And I think this movie made me realize I'm pretty hard to please with this, but it reminded me a little bit of that episode of The Simpsons where Marge keeps wearing that same Chanel dress, but she just like near the end of the movie.
Oh, so everything takes place here.
Yeah, like because near the end of the movie, you're like, wait, like all these scenes are literally taking part on different sides of this box.
Well, there's the 5 points.
Yeah, I know, but it's a very small area of it, and so like, not to be like a butthead about it, but it just like you're like, okay, so it's this part of the set now, and when you get in really tight on them,
Like a play.
it's amazing.
Yes.
It very much felt like a play.
Yeah,
perfect
it's
point.
all there. It's all there the entire time. And I don't mean to be like so picky about it, but it's just like when you can see every scene in the background, like every location in the background of this one shot, it made New York feel very small. And that was yet another time where I was like, is that kind of the point? Is New York still so small at this point that we're supposed
Except
to
when
feel?
Cameron Diaz is uptown,
Yeah.
and you're like, is this 8 days away? This is a different universe.
My relationship with this movie when it first came out was like, this is cool. I enjoy this a lot. And I never saw it after the first time that I watched it. And I would say within 10 minutes of it starting, I had the same feeling you did, Ryan, which is like this precipitous drop. All the way to the point where I was like, this is a ridiculous movie. And then I would say halfway through it, I was like, okay.
When the movie starts. Like, it is like, we could have done this in a
What a
Star Wars
prologue.
crawl.
Yeah.
Bill of the Butcher's back somehow. They fly now? But then I thought maybe I got onto the wavelength of the movie. Maybe it got better. Something happened. Maybe some of the worst actors left the movie. But I kind of got a little bit into it, but still on balance. I was just, it feels like a big swing and ultimately a pretty big miss.
I did not see this. I've seen clips of Daniel Day-Lewis looking like a badass and go,
Yeah.
I think I would love this movie.
Whoopsie daisy.
That's a pretty good DDL.
That's pretty good, yeah.
I heard the hack tag of Cameron Diaz's accent is terrible after watching it. She was
Tied for first and last.
maligned because everybody's accent sucks.
I can't believe it. Like, there are Irish actors.
I think they're making fun of movies in this movie.
That's another thing. Like,
Isn't acting dumb?
I mean, because I just watched the Banshees of Inisherin. Like, at the time that this movie was made, a lot of those people were too young to be in it. But, like, Ireland produces actors, and you can go out and find them. If, barring that, you can get people to teach people how to do accents.
Well, he found a vinyl or whatever was pre-vinyl of Walt Whitman doing a poem in the style of New York then, and went, that's what we'll sound like then, of everybody in New York.
Is that true?
Yes.
Yeah, because that's how Bill the Butcher sounds to me.
That's Bill and his crew.
Yeah.
And everybody else is like, I will go from the Lucky Charms leprechaun to the leprechaun. It's just maybe I heard of Irish once.
Cameron Diaz, her thing is sometimes she forgets.
Yeah.
I just know it. There's times
She just
where,
shouldn't.
And she shouldn't. She's so pretty.
But for her,
think
I do think sexism exists. For her to get shit on and Leo to not is horse shit.
Yes, because he's maybe the worst.
And I think it's just like, I think for any movie made by a filmmaker, you can prioritize or you can see what their priorities were. And he didn't give a fuck about this.
No.
There's so many things. And Mike, we don't know what we're about to talk about with this movie.
I refuse to reveal it.
Yeah. So maybe we'll get into this about the director of the film. But he was so enchanted by other aspects of this movie that if you walk up there and you're like, well, I am Leonardo, he doesn't care.
He'll just be like, look at that ship in the background.
I've been into Kurosawa films recently.
Oh, wow.
And
Ryan.
And his movies have periods that I would say are downright boring. And I read about him that he was a painter, and then it made everything make so much sense to me because he approaches every movie first as the sight and then the sound. And I feel like that's what happened with this movie. He like had a visual idea of what he wanted it to be, and like you said, it's almost like, well, it doesn't matter.
If I
what
couldn't
they
hear
say.
anything, I would be like, if this was on the
Yes.
background at a bar, thank you for turning sports off. And this is dope to look at.
Hey, gangs are a sport. America's a sport.
America's a sport.
Just
But
the hats.
It's not the camera, though. He is the master of camera movement. Like, he invented
it's set dressing.
It's production.
Yes.
That's what he's into here, and I think that's what's so crazy. He dabbled in this before in a movie that like went up in my estimation after watching Gangs of New York, which is Age of Innocence, which like that's not a Marty movie, right? But like he had different priorities for that movie. But with this one, like, let's get into it.
We want to get into it. We're going to take a
right
quick
in
break,
there.
and then we're going to get right up in there.
Well, that is very, very funny. Or very sad, and perhaps now you have something to think about. Or very problematic, and perhaps we have something to think about. But in any event, I'm sure you have some reaction to what you're listening to.
So why not check us out on the social media? You can go to Instagram or Twitter and find us at YourPopFilter. Email contacts@YourPopFilter. Hey, everybody, keep watching them movies.
After tackling New York in the 70s with Mean Streets, Taxi Driver, New York in the 40s and 60s with Raging Bull, New York in the 40s with New York, New York, New York of the 80s via After Hours, New York of the 50s to the 80s in Goodfellas, and New York in the 90s with Bringing Out the Dead, Martin Scorsese decided to take on New York in the 1860s with Gangs of New York. Based on Herbert Asbury's 1927 book, The Gangs of New York, about the city's 19th century criminal underworld, which Scorsese had been wanting to adapt since the 70s. For decades, everyone told him it would be too expensive, and nobody wanted that story, until a little folk hero named Harvey Weinstein got the funding. They rebuilt Lower Manhattan in Italy and cast veteran character actor Daniel Day-Lewis alongside up-and-comers Cameron Diaz and Leo DiCaprio to tell the Shakespearean-style tale of love, revenge, murder, and the fight for American democracy. Taste buds, I ask you this. We all know that this was a pet project of Scorsese's. What do we think drew him to it? What themes is he continuing from his oeuvre? And what fresh ones does the story allow him to take on, other than New York, y'all, I grew up there?
Before we get into what he's continuing, because I do think that is a rich conversation, I want to get into what he's not, which is I read a book and I like the book.
Yeah.
I think that, like, he is not making a movie here. Like, this harkens back to, like, not harkens back, but like this reminds me of like my feeling with like Phase 4 Marvel movies, where like you are stringing scenes together.
Yes.
You're like, Ken Burns is a little boring for me, and you have you have lost all sauce as far as
It's too close to your
characterization
passion.
or drama goes, because you just want to see the people in the costumes do the things that you read in the book.
I would be fine with that if any of this was from the book. Digging into it, yes, these gangs mostly existed.
In New York?
Yes, in New York. William Poole is who Billy the Butcher is based on. William Poole never actually killed anybody.
What about pigs?
Pig?
He probably killed
He
pigs.
killed some pigs.
Yeah.
He was just like a scary dude who did live in 5 Points. The Hellcat Maggie, yes, she existed. That she had the shaved teeth and stuff. So side characters, but everything that makes you go, this sucks, is from Martin and his buddies. The thing I was like, this is so dumb as hell, it has to be true, of the army just deciding to blow up, probably the Navy because they're on boats, blow up 5 Points. No, didn't happen. The riots, not that violent.
Well, it is the most violent, like, event in American history, right? Like, that riot, like, killed more people than any other riot.
I
The
think
draft was
12 people died.
1,200.
Did
we look at different websites?
Take care of a couple of zeros there.
Did you go to one website and I went to 100.com?
Maybe.
I think that there's a big thing, but it reminded me of the movie Pearl Harbor, which is like, we're going to tell this boring ass story with all these characters that don't have any characterization, but we'll put them in a historical background, and then we're going to throw this thing on at the end. Like, we're just going to attach all this stuff with like no through line, which historical nonfiction or even historical fiction that like you don't need a through line.
Yeah.
That's not how.
And if you're thinking, man, a movie about gangs and about a guy has a new father figure who killed his old father figure, and it's, we were all like this, and here's when it was great. Man, Martin Scorsese should crush that shit.
Yeah. I think marrying up what you both said, here's what I think he really was in love with. Not the book. He was in love with his experience
Of reading the book. Yeah.
And probably what happened was, and you have this, sometimes you just find the right book at the right moment. And you have a very, reading for a lot of times it's an experience where you're just like going through the motions, you're getting through the story, you're trying to figure out.
Mm-hmm.
And then sometimes you have these magical ones where it's like a movie takes place in your head. He saw a visual sort of like a color palette.
Right.
He saw a world. For me, it's always reminded me of Jacob Riis's How the Other Half Lives, because he's writing around the same time in around the same area. And there is like sort of a very historical interest in seeing New York at that time. And in that way, you can be pulled away from like the duty you have.
Right.
to
And
tell
as an
a
artist.
story.
Also, like, how many in 2002? How many westerns has Hollywood made at this point?
Many.
Hundreds.
Like 10,000 potentially.
Yeah.
Like,
No, but I feel like right around 2002, not any for a while.
Right.
Correct.
But
Yeah.
like here we have the Wild East.
Yeah.
Like we have
Right.
a period that like nobody ever talks about, and I'm gonna do that. And that's what he was interested in instead of what he's good at. Like no one has taken us into the dark toxicity of violent men and how disgusting they are, but how compelling they are. Like this person, and it's all gone here. It's just
It is. It's fascinating to be like, I'm going to tell a story in the middle of the Civil War about people who do not give a fuck that the Civil War is going on, except it's a minor inconvenience to what is important. That's super interesting.
And I mean, he uses Civil War to make, you said like it's the Wild East, because ultimately isn't that what he's doing? He's making the same story that he's making the same point that every Western does, which is that we have our little conflicts, but that they get absolutely obliterated when like the federal government shows up and says that we're at a step. And so his like strong anti-federal government message in this I thought was really interesting, because like it kind of recasts the racial violence of these riots, which he kind of on the one hand shows as very racialized violence.
He kind of on the one hand shows.
Yeah. But doesn't he also sort of like, in a way, he kind of mentions it, but then every time you see the riot, I don't know, it seems like he's moving the attention away from the racial aspect onto something that has more to do with like Me Too, like Irish people also experience racism. That seems to be like a major issue.
All I had to think is when this came out, and then I think a year or two after this, Boondock Saints came out, it had to be insufferable to fucking hang out with anybody from Boston, New York, any fucking Irish Mick.
More than it is every other day.
Yes.
Every other point.
More than every other, because we used to be called the N-word too.
Yeah.
Okay, bro, that was hundreds of years ago. You gotta stop saying that.
And yeah, you don't want to, maybe even if this wasn't Scorsese's intention, you don't want to give them a movie to go to be like, see?
Right.
But like based on what I read, Mike, and I know it's different than yours, but based on what I read, this riot was the third act of the movie was a draft riot of like, we don't want to get drafted, but while we're getting drafted, why don't we take advantage of that and kill every black person we see?
By the third act of the movie, I was like, this is your movie. I no longer care about the gangs. I don't know if I ever did care about your characters, but I want to know what these people are going. Leo says, like, we thought we were having our little tiff, but this was going on. I'm like, good point. I'd rather have known about that the whole time.
And
is Jimmy, is he a young baby Barksdale from The Wire? Is one of
he's
Leo's. Once we got to there, and I was thinking this for a while, and once we got to him
the
getting
only
killed,
person of color who had 6 or 7 lines in the movie.
Once he was getting killed, I was like, should he have been the star of this whole movie?
And
But like that's the thing that Scorsese fails at here is that he will push Travis Bickle or Jake LaMotta to the edge, and he will show you all of the reasons why they're terrible and sort of make you on their side, but definitely not, right? Like they're bad people. They have caused more damage in this world than good, and he finds that interesting. With this movie, he's like, yeah, but we all love Bill in Amsterdam, right? And we don't want to show them as racist.
One of the least nuanced, not just Scorsese movies we've covered on this show, is what this felt like.
Yeah, and also like nuanced, and then also like there are scenes where characters like seem to say what the point of the movie is, and I don't feel like I've seen that in other Scorsese movies, like that where all the rich people are together and they're like, well, you know, you were just saying the other day that the way to control the poor is get one half of them to kill the other half. Dude, I don't know if you can just say that in the middle of the movie, like, and then that's right before the riot.
Or if somebody says that to you, then you have to go to center stage, spotlight on you, and then do a little monologue about what you're going through right now.
There I was, 11th vote. Nobody wanted me as a Speaker of the House. Well, this is fun. He is a master. I like when like titans of their art can really turn in turds.
Yeah.
I mean, it definitely makes me like I want to talk to you guys about Taxi Driver or Raging Bull so bad.
I wanted to be like, should we stop our normal movie of the year and just do a run on Scorsese? Because I loved After Hours, which I know is like one of his not beloved movies.
And you loved it too, right? I thought After Hours did pretty well on the show. I didn't like it because there was elements about it that I didn't like. But
you hate Terry Garr.
I just thought it was so male centric in a way that just like
and a Scorsese movie
turned me off. But
here he tried, so maybe he shouldn't fucking try because Jenny is not a great character.
Is there a director that like doesn't have 1 to 5 stinkers though. It feels like they can't all be good. Is that a weird way to look
and
at
I
it?
think that this is a really good example of I don't think this is a swing for the fences artistically. I think this is a swing for the fences commercially.
Yeah.
I'm going to cast it with
Yes.
these people, and I want awards at the same. I want
Yes.
box office and awards at the same
And
time.
I want
Yes.
white people to go get riled up at the movies.
Yeah,
right?
and I have an end goal, which is money and awards,
Right.
and then I'll fill in the back, of like what my other goals are, which they did not get filled in, as opposed to almost every other movie he's ever made, which is I have a first goal.
Yeah.
Whatever I
I
don't
have
have
this story I want to tell.
I don't care if it makes money or wins awards.
I just think anything you're obsessed with at 20 probably won't turn into a good artistic piece.
And I wonder, the story is always like, I've had this movie that
Yeah.
I've wanted to make for a long time. I wonder how much that story might actually be, I had no ideas, so I went back to this one I had when I was
Right.
like 20 years old. And then you just pitch it always as I always wanted to do this, and this was my first time.
And I think because he is famously Italian, he said when he read the book, he grew up in Little Italy. I don't know if you guys know, he's from New York. He grew up in Little Italy, and he read Gangs of New York and went, I've never thought of other people being here before Italians. So I think why the Irish come across the way they do is because at 20, he went, other people matter? And he, as far as he could go with that, is other white people, the
Right.
Irish. And that's why they come off as just like, they are heroes no matter what they do.
It's interesting because the movie, I don't love the way the movie handles it, but the Irish in the history of America really did go from non-white to white. And Italians in America really did go from non-white to white. That might be interesting to talk about, like the whiteness as a concept that has grown and, who is allowed to put on that mantle and who never gets there.
Which is, I think, why it's two cultures that have all of the advantages of being white, but we can still make fun of.
Yes.
And it's fine.
Well, that's McGloin was a dead rabbit under Liam Neeson, and then when Amsterdam comes back as a young adult, he is now one of Bill's right hand man. What an interesting story! You did that journey of you were not white, now you are. That's not what we're here about.
Amsterdam is almost purposefully so thin as a character
Yeah.
because he doesn't fucking care. Also,
his name is Amsterdam. New York's New Amsterdam.
Oh,
Yeah.
that fucking he was like, I'm Amsterdam, and Bill went, I'm New York. I'm like, oh, fuck you, movie.
I gotta go.
are you surprised there wasn't a conversation where like the opposing gang to the dead rabbits is like the only good rabbit is a dead rabbit, and then the dead rabbit's like,
Thank you.
that's what I
Yeah,
was about to say.
there's a bunch of
that.
us here.
The only
I
good rabbit is a dead
appreciate it.
rabbit.
All right, I think we've said what we think about this movie. We're going to take a quick break. We come back, dig into a different aspect. Taste buds, as we've said, we see a lot about race and a lot about the immigrant experience in America here. But does Gangs of New York advance the ball in these discussions? Or does it make it worse, retrograde and reactionary?
Yeah, to me it felt like this kind of like 2002 award seeking commentary that involves race but doesn't end up being about race.
Just
and
enough for voters to be like, okay.
Yeah, Green Book without Mahershala Ali as a character in it.
yeah,
Like,
kind of like, I mean, because ultimately it's uncomfortable to me what he is saying
Saying.
about race, because he's making to me it felt like he's making a huge equivalence between the Irish immigrant experience and what it has meant throughout the history of America to be a black American.
a movie could be interesting if done well. Of yes, there were layers of white, and unpeeling that, and Irish weren't considered white, but still, it was always harder to be black.
You can,
And he did not.
You can't include the draft riot. I know that you need a third act, but to include the draft riot, and I know we hit a little bit of this in our previous segment, but they got pissed that they were being drafted, and they're like, well, we can't beat the army. Let's kill every black
Because
person.
it's like, well, why are we fighting for the black people? Well, I guess we'll kill killing the rich makes so much sense to me.
And, yeah, sure.
Always.
That did happen. That's not shown here either. And they burned the rich's houses down.
Yeah.
They killed the black people. Their lives
Yeah.
were over. But it's that whole thing is this is where we are on the totem pole, and then make equivalencies. That's fine. But this is so half-assed.
Because you know what? I suspect the truth really is of the draft riots, and it's the same thing that happened in the Tulsa riots. If you're going to tell that story, you have to show how white people at that time are coveting what little
Right.
Black Americans had, and planning, if anything ever goes south, this is where we're going and this is what we're going to do. Like, because a riot, when you say riot, it makes people think of everyone randomly running out into the streets and just doing whatever thing they first think
Chaotic
of.
chaos.
The elephant running down the street, right?
Yeah.
But when we're talking about racialized violence, as has taken place in this country several times, many times,
One or two.
it's more planned than the story we tell ourselves about it. It is organized terror on a large scale, and then later we tell ourselves, yeah, people kind of rioted last night. That's not the story here.
Generalities.
That's not really what happened. And so he kind of like includes the occasional line that indicates that the violence is directed at
But that
black
makes it
people.
weirder.
Yeah, but in a
That the
way, it does
occasional-
more to occlude, I feel like, because then what we're seeing is that that's not the story we're being told. That's not at the center of the story we're being told. Well, why, as the viewer, why are we being told the story we're being told, and why does the third act come in and seem
Right.
to render all of that moot?
Especially, and I don't want to ever be this guy, but it's hard not to with this kind of thing where parts of this movie are real, but so much of it is not. And then the real parts are more interesting than the shit you made up.
Yeah.
That gets harder to parse.
And I get what you're saying, and I know why that's weird to say. And like you do as the filmmaker, or all the filmmakers, editor, writer, everyone, get to pick and choose the story that you're telling, right?
Right.
And so I think that I'm usually the one on the podcast that like, why didn't they include that? Or why do you have a problem with that? Because you're not Martin Scorsese.
Yeah.
So like you don't get that decision making. But it's the slight inclusion of when I need it. But like when it's convenient for me,
Right.
there was other years of this time to do. There was other things to do, and the way that he did it, and how devastating it was to more so the black people and the Chinese people of this time, to just be like, but the Irish people were bummed, like that. It's offensive, you know.
You could have made that movie, and then this conversation would be about like, well, you didn't include these folks who are definitely around. But it is the McGloin. They're in the middle of their gang war is about to start, and everybody knows it, between the new Dead Rabbits and the Bowery Boys, or whatever their new name becomes. And instead of fighting about that, the natives, McGloin is screaming that Jimmy is allowed in this church because he's black. And it's those sprinklings. It's like, so you knew you should have.
Right. So yeah, like that's just like,
what have we been doing until now?
I'm gonna pay a little bit of dues when I need to.
Right. But because the big gang fight that gets ruined is fake, to choose to put it at the same night as those riots when they start killing all the black folks is bananas.
It's like you are intentionally creating a new narrative to get attention, which it does do, right? This movie is popular. People do talk about it. And so, like, for a lot of people, the primary text they have about the draft riots is this movie. So it does come in, and it presents a completely new story and a completely recentered story.
I wonder how many movies we have in the history of movies, not just this, like 2002, where like that one black character that we had represents so much history.
Right.
Yeah.
But like we didn't have time, and so like he's going to say a couple lines and he's going to run around and like he's going to be scared, he's going to kill some people, he's going to almost die, and that's all the rest of the story.
Right.
So we did it, right?
But what an interesting story about this black dude in the 5 points amongst a bunch of Irish people. Why are you here, Jimmy? I would love to know that guy's story. And we know he's a good actor, more than 2002 Leo is in this movie.
And I guess Martin Scorsese would say something like, I that he is not prepared to tell that story.
Look, I had to include a woman. You want me to do black people too?
That was big for him.
But it's just, I think that it's the kind of thing, maybe he wouldn't even question it, and that's part of the problem. Maybe he just like he wouldn't see what the issue is. And that's part of what the issue is that it's an area of blindness for him.
A fun critique I saw from back in the day is they at least do include Chinese immigrants in this movie, even though they're shit on the way they were back then. But somebody was like, there was actually way more in this movie than there were in New York at this time, which is a weird, like, here's the thing I'm going to pick a historical bone with.
Too many Chinese people.
Too many Chinese folks. Let's pivot to other issues. We have the woman, the Jenny. It's the riots, and out of nowhere, a couple decides to punch her, and possibly, like, the dude looked like he was going to sexually assault her, but maybe that's just what I think when dudes start punching chicks.
No, this is another time where the movie, like, it seems to indicate on some levels that she is potentially in danger of sexual assault, but then doesn't have like the stick-to-itiveness to make that what's really happening so that we can then make a comment on it. It's like, if you think that's what's going to happen, then that's what's going to happen. If you think that's not what's going to happen, then I don't want to like darken your day by bringing that image up.
Plus, not to change the topic from you, Mike, but it's all part of the way that almost all the violence in this movie is, which is do you guys remember viewfinders?
Yeah.
And I have a viewfinder, and I'm pulling that fucking lever as fast as fucking possible. So it's just 1 second of
no scene gets to breathe.
Right.
Well, especially like, and I was trying to think of this, and maybe this is very stupid to do. The riots are like midtown up, because that's where the rich people live, and that's the people who are dodging the draft, and that's where the drafting is happening. That makes sense. For the 5 points, and I know riots are uncontrollable in the unnuanced way without what you were talking about, then, Greg. But for them to come into 5 points in the Bowery and the Wharfs, completely different part of town. Now you are attacking each other, and I know that's how in modern days the right views it, of like these animals are just killing their own neighborhood. It just, I guess viewfinder's the perfect way. It just, at this point, he's like, I have these little vignettes and I want to show them, and it doesn't mean anything anymore.
The more we talk about it, the more it seems to me that this movie just really suffers from not having much of a vision. Like, I don't think there is a central vision.
Except New York was older than I thought it was.
Kind of, yeah. And like the way he felt when he read a book when he was a younger man. But that all of these problems are because he couldn't commit to one thing he wanted to say, one idea that was really important to him.
There's a thing that I think we have to talk about, although I don't know how much, which is that this was turned in to Miramax, and as you said, Mike, sex criminal Harvey Weinstein at like 4.5 hours, and they said we will not go more than like 168 or whatever it is, and that movie might have been good. But what we get, there was no Leo voiceover in that version. Nice. And there's so much weird editing and like fast forward, I'm going to cut through shit. Like, I think that they spared, like they were like frame by frame, let's go through this and make this as fast as possible.
MTV style editing when that is not the director's vision.
Yeah. We are, in 2002, we're already, I think, done with MTV style editing and not wanting it from Martin Scorsese.
Who edited Go? Get him for Gangs of New York.
But I think that we're now just like racing. I'm going to remember how Johnny Five from Short Circuit would read a book? Like that's what we're doing with this book. And I had no time. Anytime that we stopped, I was more pissed than when we were going fast. Like anytime I had to watch Leo and Cameron Diaz bite each other, like that was worse than
charismatic couple I can think of in a movie.
But I think that
the
they
hottest
were
people of 2002.
Yeah,
like doing nothing for each other.
But I think that they were racing to get through all of this, and it just, none of it works. I honestly, like, the more that I've sat with this movie and the more that I've talked about it with you two, I'm struggling to think of what was good about it.
Right. But again, I think the set design was very nice.
Yes, costumes were good.
I kind of think the design
helmet he wore at the end, Billy the Butcher.
I kind of think the design of the character Billy Butcher was pretty good.
Yeah.
And I also think that sort of Billy Butcher's central ethos, I think, was ascendant in 2002 in a way that nobody like pointed at in quite the way that this movie does. I mean, this is like proto Tea Party.
Yeah.
Like and so in a way it does kind of like presage like the 20 years of political history
of real people acting like this.
And
and so that's kind of redeeming in a way to me.
He's openly villainous. And then when he's wearing, you can tell when he's in his butcher's outfit, he will murder any motherfucker. And then when he has a top hat, he'll like wink and nod at it, but be like, "How dare you be impropriety here in this scenario?"
Except for the barber.
Yeah,
that guy he wore the top hat and absolutely killed him. Yeah, he's a showman. He knows how important it is to like that politics has to also be a show.
And I think this is going on for sort of all of the characters, like Jenny Evergreen,
Jenny from the block.
She, wearing these costumes in to do certain kind of robberies. Right. But like, I think that all of these personas that you have is like vital to the movie. Mm-hmm. But I think that why we're not getting peak Martin Scorsese is because he did not have the audacity to make Billy the Butcher the main character and show, like, really take us in.
Yeah.
He was like, this will make more money if he's a side character,
Yeah.
and we have
Yeah.
handsome Leo
Let
here.
me get the Titanic kid in here.
Right.
That first he's the enemy, then he's the spy, and then he's the enemy again. And so he's always a couple degrees at remove from the really toxic stuff
Mhm.
that Billy the Butcher.
But he at no point figures out Billy the Butcher like he does Jake LaMotta
Right.
or Travis Bickle.
yeah.
Because it's like, oh, I did that, but it's like, I don't know. I'd rather you play that tune again, Marty,
Yeah.
than whatever this is.
Speaking of, can we talk about the DDL?
Yes.
I realized something watching this. Did you guys think that like maybe Marty thought somebody was too old to be in this movie, and so cast the DDL instead with the I'm gonna whisper and then I'm gonna scream?
No way.
And I think that you know how like when we do impressions of celebrities, like they're so bad that you can't even tell who they are.
Uh-huh.
I think he's doing a Robert De Niro impression this entire time.
Wow.
Maybe subconsciously, but like the notes that Scorsese is giving him
Right.
are like, if Robert De Niro could do this right now, he would, but he can't, so you're doing this. And I think it is a late 70s, early 80s De Niro performance.
That's very interesting. I mean, is it Daniel Day-Lewis's worst performance?
Yes, I think.
Because
And
it's so big and broad and
I think because
You
there's
can't
no
see the
truth
depth.
to the character. I think that because Martin Scorsese doesn't have a vision for it, and because he is not, there's like not a reality that he ever
It's-
finds.
what does he
And
need in this scene specifically?
Yeah, and
I'm
so,
illiterate, but I also have a huge vocabulary, and I'm very philosophical, but
He's
like I don't
18
listen
characters.
to anybody. Yeah, like
yeah, I'm like very down to earth, but I'm super fancy. He's almost supposed to be like just like an avatar of American.
right.
or
That's
something.
it. It's like he got a British guy, right?
Mhm.
Is he,
Yeah.
Is he British?
As hell, dude. Yeah.
To say be America right
Yeah.
now.
And that's not gonna like what Daniel Day-Lewis needs is he needs to know the true kernel of the character, and then begin to grow the character
Right.
out from there. And when you say to him, "Well, that's not really there," he's going to go through all the motions, and that's what we see here. Him trying to find it, scene after scene after scene.
His love of Liam Neeson, which is so interesting. I hate this guy. I love him. The Last Man with
Could
Honor.
have been interesting, I think.
Could have been in. Yeah, like you hunt for it at this
Right.
point.
Yeah.
Like, oh, I like that idea. And then him being like, here's what you do, but coward stab in the back, and then him killing Brendan Gleeson.
Yeah.
The movie has no thoughts about that. The movie doesn't realize the hypocrisy of that moment.
The Liam Neeson thing, like, I'm glad you brought that up because the Liam Neeson thing feels like, all right, script is done. Shit. No. Every 30 pages, write a line where Daniel Day-Lewis, I don't care what we're doing, Daniel Day-Lewis talks about how much he loves Liam Neeson.
Right.
Actually, I really liked that guy. If I think about it, I did kill him, but also
My
I
best
respected
friend.
the hell out of him.
We're going to take a break, and when we come back, talk about this movie's subtlety, or lack thereof.
Hey guys, thank you so much for listening so far. And let me just tell you that everything ahead of this commercial is much better than what came before it. That's my guarantee. While I have you here, let me tell you about a website. It's called yourpopfilter.com, and it's everything you need that's related to Pop Filter. Everything Mike, everything Ryan, everything Greg, everything Cassie, everything is there at yourpopfilter.com. While you're there, go to yourpopfilter.com/Amazon. Make that your new Amazon bookmark and do your shopping from there. That way, we get a little piece of the action, and Amazon doesn't. Make sure you're also listening to everything that Pop Filter has to offer, which includes the Superhero Show, a podcast that covers every single TV show that's based on a comic book or comic book property, and Movie of the Year, where we sit down and try and figure out what is the single greatest movie of any given year. That's Superhero Show, that's Movie of the Year, and that's yourpopfilter.com. Rate, subscribe, review. Bye!
Taste buds, I think we've danced around a lot of this. Does this movie lack subtlety as an artistic choice? And is it anticlimactic with the U.S. Army destroying the 5 points before Bill and Amsterdam can settle their war? Do either of those critiques miss the point that this movie is trying to make?
I thought at first its lack of subtlety was the point.
Like America.
I didn't know it was based on a book, and I got the sense that maybe there were, you know how in like the westerns there were the Penny Dreadfuls or whatever,
Mhm.
like that. Yeah, and it
It's
felt
pulpy.
like it felt like a
Love a
pulp
pulp.
version of this. So at first I was like trying to give it a lot of credit and trying to get there with the movie, and I think that kind of helped me through it.
There was a lot of it where I made it through thinking like, oh, Scorsese saw William Shakespeare's Romeo and Juliet, like the Baz Luhrmann
Yeah,
version.
this is
He's
very
trying to do it.
stylized.
He's making fun of Troy.
But now that we have talked about it and we've aired it out for the last hour, I have to say I'm very firmly in the camp of it doesn't have much to say. It doesn't know how to say it. And when it does have a message, it's just like, shit, don't let anybody miss it. You know how you know that the movie does not digest the fact that he says I would never stab someone in the back and then does? Because no character comes out and goes, he said he would never stab anybody in the back, but then he did. If the movie had meant to digest that, one of the characters would have walked right up
the
that.
Tammany guy.
Yeah.
would have.
Or how about this, Mike? Leo goes to jail and comes back 16 years later or whatever it is, and then runs into the cop who is John C. Reilly.
Right.
Or is it? Let's flash back to in the caves and see that, oh my God, that is John C. Reilly.
John C. Reilly.
One of the most recognizable faces in the history of Hollywood.
Another interesting
we saw
different
10 minutes ago.
protagonist who went from like, I'm part of the Dead Rabbits, this shit upon Irish gang, to now I'm part of the law, but I'm dirty law. What do I even believe in? Underused JCR.
That could have been interesting, but again, there was no vision behind it. Like, what did that mean? What did it? You know, I can put my watch up on the lamppost and nobody will touch it. That could have been an epic scene, but the movie doesn't feel like.
And then
doing
there's a
much
dead
with
person
it.
there, and that's like
And that's
more
him.
like, oh, what are we doing? Like, what is this name? Nope, we're moving on.
And then we
Yeah.
recreate the dead person scene with what's the actor's name? He's in love with Cameron Diaz here. He sells out
You don't know who that is?
Amsterdam. He's the guy. He's the dad in Haunting of Hill House.
Okay.
But who is he really?
More importantly, Moody wise. Movie of the year
Blow
was
my mind. Oh, that's
Yeah.
what Moody means?
Sweep us up.
Elliot
Oh
from
my
E.T.
God!
Really?
Yes,
That's
guys.
Elliot from E.T. Wow.
Am I right that he's in the dad in Haunting of Hill
Yes.
House and he's in all of?
Not the important part. The important part is what I say.
Elliot.
He's
Sure.
Elliot from E.T.
But I just didn't realize this kid kept acting.
Uh-huh.
Good for him.
And like, I don't know. Like, I'm on record on this show saying that Elliot is one of the best performances of all time. Handsome guy. Like, even with his bad, they
Sure,
dyed
yeah.
the hair red as bad as the accents were. Like, it all looked. Everybody looks like an Energizer battery. But yeah, he should have had more of a career.
Yeah.
You know,
I'm
what
glad
is
he
it? Henry
found-
Thomas, 2 first names.
What?
Henry Thomas, 2 first names.
You need at least 3
Right.
to really soar in Hollywood.
Henry Thomas Henry.
And a very boring character
Mhm.
in this. Also loves Cameron Diaz, so betrays everybody because he's the jilted
Yeah.
lover. Okay.
But then it's like, I'm sorry. And everyone's like, yeah, we know you're sorry. We're
yeah,
sorry
man,
too.
don't worry about it. I met an exciting new person from far away, and I wanted to take them into my life and see if I could rediscover some magic. I don't know. That's my whole thing.
We've been recording the show for so long that I don't remember if we brought this up, but I remember one of the big deals when this movie came out. And you guys will stop me if we already brought this up, right?
Sure.
Yeah, sure.
Okay. Do you guys remember when Atonement came out and it was like some people liked it, some people didn't, but that fucking Ferris wheel scene with the like the
No.
big long take all around.
Oh, yeah.
You did not bring this up, and I don't know what you're talking about.
There's a scene where people get off. It's a oneer, probably with some digital
Yeah,
effects
it's a
helping out.
little-
But it's a oneer where Irish people get off
Fucking
the
Irish
boat,
people.
take some cabbage to the face,
Yeah.
are
Get
told
drafted directly into the army.
yeah, go right into a line where they get drafted. Are put a uniform gets put on them. They're handed a gun and they get onto a different boat, saying, "Well, I hope I like this war." And then the wonder continues, and
Yeah.
caskets come off the boat, and this rings so false to me.
Oh,
this
it did it here too.
this rings so like you are trying hard to be an O2 auteur.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just like you should not as the viewer be actively deciphering the scene as it's presented to you. I really think that there is something that kind of turns your stomach as the viewer when rather than a scene washing over you and then later upon reflection you're like, oh, I get what they were doing there. When as the scene is unfolding, you're like, oh, they're getting off one boat and they're getting on another one. And you already kind of know what the next thing is going to be, which is that you're going to see coffins coming off this boat. I don't know. It's like, yeah. It's
So you're saying you're better than
dissatisfying.
Scorsese?
In
Yeah,
that moment, you feel like you're reading the cliff notes of the movie
That-
rather than seeing the movie.
That's the perfect point because bad Scorsese is like, or good Scorsese is like, you're not going to get it until the third time.
Yeah.
Bad Scorsese is like, watch it 20 years ago. That's the only way you're going to like the movie is if you watch it 20 years ago and you only have memories of what you
Walk
liked
through
about it.
while your neighbor's over for some reason on your couch, and you'll get it.
Yeah.
Speed round. Taste buds, how nervous are you that a bunch of drunk Irish firefighters are going to bust into the studio right now as we record?
Those, man, I love those guys.
There's so many different versions of Deus Ex Machina, but the most fun is drunk, angry gang of firefighters.
Look, every scene needs 40 drunk firefighters to come in, but there's no better scene than when two groups of firefighters kick the shit out of each other instead of solving the fire.
Do you know historically that has been like true going back to the beginning of time, that like fire companies have been these like private kind of gangs and that they don't like each other?
Man, they're probably so happy that we all hate cops right now instead of firefighters.
Well, I have to say modern day firefighters are just cops. They are they have unified so tightly.
man.
Yeah.
Should we start a
not
private one? The three of us?
yes.
Dude, why
And
not?
just beat
Yeah.
the shit out of the local city firefighters.
Oh, no. That would be a good fight, Mike. Yeah.
Hey, I've seen their calendar. I don't think they're up to snuff this year. This is a star-studded lineup from a time when stars mattered. How does the ensemble hold up today, and are they overshadowed by DDL like everybody in every other movie he's ever been in?
Brendan Gleeson aside, this is a career worst performance from everybody in the movie.
Have you ever seen Jay Leno's garage? It's a bunch of amazing cars that just sit there and never get to experience life. That is this fucking
Greg.
movie, dude. It is. I could not. You like look out there, and everyone you've ever liked is in this movie doing the worst job they've ever done.
I think this is why, like, Brendan Gleeson is wait, is that his name? Is that what you said? Brendan Gleeson is amazing and has been forever, and people are starting to finally notice. And
And
this
he's still
movie
coasting.
proves it. He's coasting,
But, like-
crushing everybody else.
Because he's the mercenary in real life. He's the actor who's like,
Yeah.
I'll do this,
Yeah.
Marty, for like, but you got to pay me.
I don't give a shit about this. Yeah.
Everybody else is like, I'm working with Marty. Oh my god,
Yeah.
and he's just like, it's a job.
John C. Reilly, who like, this is the O2 season, and we're doing 54 movies, so
Uh-huh.
we're gonna see 30 John C. Reilly movies, which is
yeah.
cool.
Love it.
But in this movie, he's like, yeah, I'll walk around the set for 4
I
days,
get to hang out
sure.
with Marty.
And this is why I think, like, I've come around a lot on Leo, and I do think that he has some amount of range. This is why I didn't think that in the past. Like,
Well, he was a kid.
By the way, was Cameron Diaz in this movie already too old to be real life Leonardo DiCaprio's girlfriend?
yeah, probably, yeah.
As we said, there's a version of this movie that is just over 3 hours. How many more firefighter fights are in that extra 20 minutes?
But 30 or 40, probably.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's mostly firefighter fights.
It's weird because I'm interested in the 4.5 hour version, but like there's no way he did it, right? There's no way that by adding things back into this movie you make a better film.
Well, like that, like the Leo voiceover being gone, like things like that. entice
Blade
me.
Runner theory.
But like, it's still, it's going to be clear that he didn't care about
Right.
characters. Like
I'm
he
so
just,
excited that we're gonna do adaptation this year.
yeah.
Because honestly, I've always reflected on that line, and God help you if you use voiceover.
Mhm.
But now that we've done this show for a while, I get it. If you really love movies, you want messages to be communicated through the entire like toolbox of film, not when one character's like, I'm gonna hop on the mic real
Yeah,
quick
not
and
even
tell
a
you
character
what's
saying it to
going
another
down."
character.
Yeah.
What is there? I would love to know. There has to be, right? A movie that uses it well. Ryan, you're our
Goodfellas.
movie guy.
Yeah, Goodfellas
I mean,
is.
Goodfellas fucking
Makes it fun.
Voiceover rocks, yeah.
Yeah, and but like that's based on a book that he did not care about and wrote the movie that he wanted based on the stories he
Yeah.
wanted to tell, you know? And then Casino, I think, is a lesser version of that. I also think too, like, I don't know. I'm very interested in the idea of adaptation, like all the things that go into it. Maybe Marty's feeling on this book makes him the least, like you, Greg, you started the movie White Noise.
Yes.
And Babak is a obsessed, like lover
Uh-huh.
of it. Don't make that movie,
Right.
dude. You
Just
cannot.
love the thing from afar.
Right, and somebody else who has a different story to tell can use white noise to tell that story. You know,
Yeah, but if you get so close to it, you don't have interesting takes on it
Right.
anymore. You just love it. Yeah, you need more than just like celebrating it.
You're a little kid being like, here's this Pokemon, and I love him
Yes.
because he does this.
who should have adapted the Gangs of New York book? Who should have adapted White Noise? It's Zack Snyder. Those would have been amazing.
Hashtag restore the real Snyderverse.
Say re-snore.
Restore. Is this movie skeptical of democracy in a way that's prescient, a way that is 2002 as funk, or in a way that is timeless?
I again think that Scorsese is like, America's fucked up, but I love it so much. And like that whole, is it Tammany Hall?
Yeah.
That's a movie on its own,
Yes.
right? But they're played like rascals. Like look at these rascals playing
Look at
around
them
with it.
shaving the guys and making them vote again, and they're our heroes.
This movie did make me think, though, as also current Congress does, how did we get to be a country? Like,
We're
that's so fucking crazy.
Bunch of bumblefucks.
Well, a bunch of men like Billy the Butcher, and nobody wants to hear this, but a bunch of men
Put on their
like
blue striped hat.
BB jumped out there and made this country what it is today.
Gentlemen, the final question. Is this movie's actual point that Irish Brogues sounded radically different than they do today?
Yeah, I wonder if he's like, no, nobody knows it. But back then, Irish Brogues were a completely different sounding thing.
Yeah, how many Irish actors auditioned for this movie? And Scorsese was like, no. What is that voice you're doing?
What are you even
Get out of
doing?
here.
Do you think that's... And I wish I knew his name because he's a good actor. Al Capone from
Boardwalk Empire?
Boardwalk Empire. Do you think that's why he's not allowed to talk in this movie? Because he actually did a good one? And they're like, no, sir.
Can't have you showing everybody up.
I can to do it is just like get rid of all words in your mind and just go.
Yeah.
Nobody hot to Todd in this movie.
Right.
Not even once.
Not a one. Normally we take a break and we come back. We're not going to do that. I know we've done a worse movie than this. I'm certain of it, but I am struggling to figure it out. What would I want recommendations? If you want some kernel of this, what should people watch instead, Greg?
I'm going to say The Irishman. Irishman is a movie that lets itself be very long. I feel like there is a take. It makes the it makes the center of the movie an extremely morally questionable guy. And it gets in there and doesn't shy away from the tough questions. Here's a guy who basically does what he's told his entire career and loses everything, but is ultimately really good at shooting people in the head.
Hell yeah.
Painting houses with that blood.
I just think it's like more complicated and interesting, and yet is still about the Irish gangster experience.
He had so much to say. And you would think like this, 80-year-old filmmaker who's made 30 movies is out.
Right.
But he had so much to say. And that's another example of a Scorsese movie that, what are we looking at? Like 3.5 hours?
Yeah.
And I've probably seen it 3 times. And the first time I was like, all right, Marty, you did it again. And then the second time I was like, this is one of his best of all time. And the third time is just like, put it on like it's an aquarium. Like, it's just so
stare,
good.
jaw, drop. I've seen you in an aquarium. You were baffled by fishes.
I want an aquarium
So
where
they're flying around in there? What?
What's that goo?
very old fish are CGI'd to look like very young fish that are kicking other fish.
And it looks real until they run. So are you just doubling down? Yours is also The Irishman?
No, I have a different one.
Please tell me.
There is a movie that was a popcorn. I don't know if it was like a hit, but it was hit-ish. Popcorn movie with DDL. He was maybe at some point going to be like a lead box office star. And he was in a movie version of the old school book, The Last of the Mohicans.
Oh yeah!
James Fenimore Cooper.
Not only is he in this movie, but it's directed by, I think, the very misunderstood Michael Mann, who is mostly known for Heat, a movie that I think is fine. But he also made Collateral and Manhunter, the original Brian Cox Hannibal Lecter movie.
Fuck off! I'll eat you.
There, yeah, that was him. And at some point in this movie, Daniel Day-Lewis says, stay alive no matter what occurs, I will find you.
Yep.
But this is, it's sort of rousing and it's old school and it's not him saying, hey, all other cast members get away from me for the entire shoot so I can become the last of the Mohicans. It's just
It's just a good epic.
It's just a badass, cool movie.
Yeah, it's him like running through the tall grass with a tomahawk and just murking fools. It's like an uncomplicated look at violence.
Yes.
Which is, they all should be. Violence rules. Mine is Leo is doing well. Scorsese is doing well. It's just a popcorn fun. I think it really feels like after watching this that it's a redo. Scorsese went, no, I can do the story of a guy not knowing whose side he's on better. It's The Departed. The Departed fucking rules, and it is just this movie, but in the 90s.
I have not seen the film Shutter Island.
I like Shutter Island.
But aside from that, I think that Scorsese's replacement of De Niro with DiCaprio has not gone well for me. I do not think any of them are good.
I bet he likes working with DiCaprio, but maybe that's the problem. Maybe you shouldn't work with somebody you like.
It's like his book, The Gangs. He's like, I love this kid so much.
It's better for box office too. He is probably the #1 star. But I think that The Aviator's overrated. I think that The Departed is overrated. I think that Wolf of Wall Street is overrated.
No.
And then in the meantime, Silence.
I was gonna say, do you know what movie
great.
fucks? Silence.
Yeah, dude.
I wish he worked with Andrew Garfield and what's the
Adam Driver.
Adam Driver more often. That movie fucking rules.
If Andrew or Adam was in Wolf of Wall Street,
That'd be insane.
I'm in.
But I believe that Leo could win over a bunch of people and turn them into a cult. Adam Driver, they'd walk in and be like, well, this guy's going to kill us all.
Maybe I don't like Leo as much as I think.
You don't.
I just think everyone around him acts circles around him. What is that? Wolf of Wall Street is
Jonah
Hill and Margot Robbie, and they destroy him in
Yeah.
that movie.
Yeah, I don't
like
know.
that
Maybe
movie.
his reputation precedes him a little bit.
He's just been handsome for so long. All right, well, that is the show. You know what? We were right. This should not have been in the bracket. This would be decimated by literally everything.
We were totally right.
And if you like this movie, reach out to us. Tell me why.
Unfaithful is a better movie than this.
Yeah.
Is that
the
our
lost
last show?
episode.
Yeah.
We are about to take a long-ass break from 2002. After this, you will hear us talk about the best albums of 2022, the best TV comedies of 22, the best TV dramas of 22 mixtape, and, of course, the only one that matters, the best movies of 2022. And
Best months of 2022?
best months. You know what I loved? February.
I was going to say March. Shit.
They're very close.
Yeah.
I had a great July myself.
Yeah?
That's my birthday.
It's his
month.
birthday.
Oh, that is your birthday.
Yeah.
I had a rough July. I'm going to be honest.
Because of Craig's birthday?
It was Craig's birthday. I got depressed. It wasn't my birthday anymore. But until then, keep watching those movies.
Hola, Filterinos. I just wanted to interrupt real briefly and say thank you for listening. Thank you for your support. If you want to support us a little more directly, you can go to patreon.com/yourpopfilter. There, depending on what tier you pick, $1 a month, $5 a month. If you're crazy, anything more than $5 a month, don't do that. You can get extra content. There's extra shows, extra series, behind-the-scenes stuff. You could pay for Ryan to draw you a picture. I can write you a poem. You can get the shirts off our very own backs. All of that and so much more over at patreon.com/yourpopfilter. While you're on the internet, you should check out Shady Monk. He does all the tunes you've been listening to. He's on Bandcamp, he's on Spotify, SoundCloud, wherever kids get their music these days that I'm too old to know. Shady Monk lives there. You can probably follow him on Twitter and Instagram as well. That's Shady Monk. Wherever you get music, check him out.